So now I call on Ahmed Samatar.
Thank you, Hussein. It's always a privilege to sit next to Hussein for a variety of reasons, and one of them, of course, is that in his own fashion, he's the kind of an oral historian of the founding and the making of Somali International Studies. He has been a model for those of us who want to create something, so I want to acknowledge that today again, thank him for presiding over this last session. I'm also thankful again to the people who have organized this wonderful Congress, the people of Djibouti, the government of Djibouti, the university people. I enjoyed both my time in the city, but also in participating in the conversations and listening to the insights from others. So I leave tonight with a great deal of fondness for the experience I have had here in the city and the conference. Let me tell you what I want to do in my own short time, quickly give you a menu of what I want to do. And first, I would like to say a few things about the existing scholarship in Somali studies. Not comprehensive, not very rigorous, but at least touch base with the existing Somali studies, existing scholarship on Somali society. And then secondly, move on, which is the second point I want to make, and that is to at least suggest for you, partly I think building what Hussein has just said, what I at least believe to be the great platforms or the great locations of the complexities of Somali society, where scholarship that exists needs to deepen and broaden, and where it doesn't exist, we need to take new initiatives. Right? That's my second item in the agenda. And then the third thing I want to say, and maybe conclude with, is to at least share with you my own conceptions of what are the roles or the role of intellectuals and scholars in the historical process in which they are part of. And so those are the three things that I would like to comment on in the hope that they will address the context that we are in right now. So pick up on the first one, scholarship that exists. The scholarship that exists comes in many forms and in many languages. It comes up in Somali, great deal of scholarship that's coming out in the Somali language, and some of the people who are heavy lifting in that area are sitting right here in front of me and other places. Bobe is one of those people. I am impressed particularly with the volume on Abdullah Sultan Tim'ad's work, which is, I think, quite well done. So it exists in Somali. Scholarship also exists in Arabic. I just ran into a young Somali scholar, upcoming scholar, who's, I think, either finishing or just about to finish, maybe finished already, a master's degree in, I think, Yemen, and working in the language in Arabic, but it is part of Somali studies. So Arabic is a thriving enterprise as a medium of research and writing in Somali studies. It is in Italian. Professor Bentley is here, among others. Erma, of course, is mostly Ethiopianist, but she also engaged Somali society. But great deal, that scholarship, and an old scholarship. Even some of the founding people in Somali studies were Italians, as you very well know. Tiroli is an eminent figure, even though he's not with us. He looms very large in Somali studies. So in Italian, it comes in French. Many of you would know that, of course. who are from Djibouti, and of course in English and other languages. Perhaps now increasingly in Finnish, since we have a growing Somali studies community in Finland. In Germany and in German studies, there are works coming up. So Somali studies is increasingly becoming a kind of an international phenomenon. And there are scholars that we could name. I can't exhaustively tell all their names, so I'm going to leave some behind. But of course, I am Louis, someone I have struggled with his work for a long, long time. I admire him a great deal. I disagree with him a great deal. But he's a landmark in Somali studies. Enrico Ciroli, of course, is a major pioneering figure. In fact, some of Louis's insights come from Ciroli. And of course, Saeed Samatar, who is not here with us, maybe the best book ever written on Muhammad Abdullah Hassan. His work is written by Saeed Samatar, beautiful piece of work in English, Cambridge University Press. Saeed is not here with us today, but I want to make sure that his name is evoked. Hussein Adam, of course, who has written on a variety of areas from Somali language to the question of politics and state formation. He has a new book that just came out, I think, Hussein, maybe 2 months ago or so? Or in August. That's available for those who want to pursue and touch the questions that we are dealing with. Lee Kassaneni, a historian that has done many, many important works, including his contribution to the last issue of Bildan with Farah on history of Somali education and the challenges that confront us. But he's a historian heavy on the southern part of the Somali society. Charles Kashekta, who is not here but in California. Mohammed Mukhtar, I think, who is here, who has been writing a great deal on a variety of very contumacious topics, and taught us a great deal about the intricacies of differences in Somali society, areas that we disagree in some areas, but he has made important contributions to that. Professor Captain, I don't know what he's here, Captains in Somali language and literature, very now perhaps the leading figure really, I think, in that area, and you have seen him make their contributions here in a variety of contexts. Ali Jum'ale, who's not here, at Queen's University, who has written a number of important pieces of work, heavy also on Somali literature. Professor Lytton Captains, better known, I think, in Somali circles, London, who is a social historian and written a number of important works in Somali society, particularly in social history. Has a book that came out a few years ago on the place of songs in the constitution of Somali identity, working on some important areas now. A professor at Wellesley College, Abdi Kuso, Peter Little, Abdi Samatar, not because he's my brother, but I think he's a decent scholar in his own right. And of course, Muhammad Afrah, who is also here and who is not only a very serious thinker and scholar in Somali culture and literature and drama, but he is also an institution builder, right here in Djibouti. Ali Boussaieh, who's not here, is an anthropologist. So the names are many, but these are just some of the examples of people who are doing real serious productive work in Somali studies. And there are new ones that are coming up, and some of them I have met them here for the first time, either in the university here or in universities in Somaliland or in universities in other parts of the Somali Republic. So I will leave that. The Somali academic production, therefore, I think is thriving. Maybe, in fact, better than the society itself right now in terms of its health of its condition. Let me move on quickly to talk about what at least I see as a kind of a typology, and this might irritate some of you, but I hope if it doesn't irritate you, at least it makes you think about this. But I have a rough typology for Somali studies. I haven't taken full measure of everybody, but this is at least what I have come up with. If you spread Somali studies, at least in the language that I know, and you spread them out, I think you might come up with some typology that might look like this, and this is the one I have come up with. First, there's a particular type of Somali studies, which I would call it dead scholarship. Dead scholarship. It's a kind of a scholarship that is antiquarian, heavy kind of a museum type scholarship. It doesn't have a pulse. Yeah? No pulse. And it's a kind of a scholarship that was good perhaps at this time. But increasingly as time goes, it becomes lifeless, like a dead body. That's one particular kind of a scholarship. It is gone with the producers who have produced it, and to revive it becomes extremely difficult to the extent, therefore, it becomes a monument for a past glory, but doesn't quite animate the present. That's one type of scholarship. The second kind of scholarship that I find in Somali studies when you do an inventory is what I call pernicious scholarship. And that is a scholarship that is very destructive, that's self-serving, that's bereft of what in the Islamic culture would be called adab, or scholarship and adab al-hayn. Some of my colleagues talk about the scholarship that essentially produces hate narratives. I call that pernicious scholarship, and I think it is available and you can see it, and it is extremely dangerous. Third type of scholarship is what I call silly scholarship. Silly scholarship. And that's a scholarship that has somewhat inconsequential, it has no consequences, if not almost meaningless. It might be a little bit metadalo, but that's all it is. And it's therefore so preoccupied with trivialities, things that are so marginal, so meaningless almost, superficialities, that in the final analysis, to borrow a word from the great French historian Fernand Braudel, it is the foam carried by the great waves of history. Humbada makasheta character, you will think it is something. But when you begin to touch it, it is nothing. What is real, the real thing is the mujadda khalisa humbada. So we're humble. It is so frivolous and so meaningless that it evaporates. I call that silly scholarship. And then the fourth kind of scholarship, which for me really is the one that I find to be gratifying. I don't necessarily do it, I would like to do it, but it's the one that I think some have done, and it is doable, and it is powerful, and that's what I call inspirational scholarship. And that means a scholarship that is very conscious of the reality of the permanent condition of permeability, the question of permeability, of change. Conscious of the reality of the permanent condition of permeability, of change. Because life is about change. Everything in life changed, including the natural environment. I was just in Lake Assal the other day, and you can see the change that's taking place. The salt is claiming certain areas, the land is pushing the salt in certain areas. So everything changed. And a scholarship that is conscious of change and the reality of change, from my point of view, is really important and inspirational. And historians, good historians, are very conscious about that. In fact, that is their forte. The importance of this also is that it is the kind of scholarship that understands and comes to terms not only with change, but lasting change, lasting, long-term change. It's the kind of a scholarship that understands deep structures. So it's not just busy with everyday but the deep structures that carry the historical process. It's a scholarship that tries to bring together structure, deep history, and agency, human action, for now. Brings those two together. And that's therefore very critical from my point of view. That kind of a scholarship, from my perspective, and to my knowledge, has been captured at best by someone that people today boo-boo, because they think he is irrelevant. But I think he is more relevant today to the time when he said this. And that's Karl Marx. This is what Marx says about this kind of a scholarship, that connects together structure and agency, big history and human action. Karl Marx says to us, and I quote, famous quote, human beings, he says, make their own history. But they do not make it just the way they please. بني آدم بتاريخ لو سميسته لكنه ما سميسته سيدو الدنيا. We wish سيدو الدنيا ما سميسته. Human beings make their own history, but they do not make it just as they please. They do not make it under circumstances chosen by themselves. You don't make history under the circumstances you want, but under circumstances found, given, and transmitted from the past. Yeah? Because the only way to know life is to understand it backwards. You can never understand life forward. If I ask you, who are you? The only thing you can do is to tell me where you came from, your name. It's all in the past, not in the future. So human beings make their own history, he says, but they do not make it just as they please. They do not make it under circumstances chosen by themselves, but under circumstances found, given, and transmitted from the past. The tradition of all the dead generations weighs like a nightmare on the brain of the living, he says. It's not, I think this captures to a certain extent the condition of the Somali society. That the tradition of all the dead generations weighs like a nightmare on the brain of the living. So to me, that's what I mean by inspirational scholarship. Let me move on quickly to the second point, and that is the crucial spheres of existence. And where the great questions in Somali studies, from my point of view, are buried. All new questions have to be asked. One, area of culture. Culture, language, literature, art, religion, all of these are part of culture. And here I want to congratulate Mohammed Afrah, who has started work a second time. I hope this time it lasts. A journal called the Halabur. I think twice a year it's going to come out. Some of it is here. That's an important area. The only challenge I have for Mohammed would be as the editor of this. The journal says that it has nothing to do with politics. My challenge to him would be, oh, come on now, you must be kidding. You're going to talk about culture and literature and art, and there's no politics? Impossible, I would say to him. Because there are really only two kinds of people who can avoid politics. As I said this afternoon. And this is from Aristotle. Either you are a god or you are a beast. Well, certainly we are not gods, and we hope we are not beasts. And therefore, there is no way really to get away from politics. The question is, what kind of a politics is literature going to deal with? They are heavily encased in politics. Yeah? So I want to underscore that debate, but the work that his group are doing are fantastic, and I think they ought to be congratulated. The second area is the area of ecology, the environment, which we don't talk a great deal in Somali studies yet. But it's a very critical area because desertification is increasingly, I think, on us in Somali lands, wherever they are. The charcoal is just one example. But the serious problem of desertification and how to deal with the environment. Great deals of questions in that area that need to be put in Somali studies. The third area for me is the area of economics and livelihoods. If there is one important truth about Somali people, wherever they are, as long as we can remember history, it's their struggle with hunger. Real hunger. So the question of the economic life and economic reality becomes a central question. And then the third area is what I just said, and that's the issue of politics. Governance, order, leadership, these kinds of questions. Now, any scholar can offer a contribution by bringing in some new information or insight. But the great challenge to you, I would suggest to all of us, is this. First, to recognize the themes that are truly important at any given time. What are the important themes? And two, posing the appropriate questions. Here is the theme. What is the question that needs to be researched at this particular time? And then thirdly, innovative research designs and strategies to answer those kinds of questions. Let me conclude by just sharing with you what I see to be the role of intellectuals in society. Because that question is often asked, but never really discussed a great deal. And there are many, many things that people can say, but I would suggest three things. The role of the intellectual, she or he, first of all, in my opinion, is a questioner. A questioner and a restless critic of the myths, the mores, the mindset, and everyday behavior of her or his society. That essentially the scholar is a critic. And someone who challenges, who questions restlessly every day and every time the mythology, the mores, the mindset, and everyday behavior of his or her own society. To me, that's the quintessential beginning of scholarship. Second, that he or she is a major exponent, a major promoter of the aspirations. The aspirations of his or her own nation and people. How they ought to live. Not how they are living now, but how they ought to live. So the inspiration question, therefore, the vision question becomes important. This means, therefore, that a scholar, he or she, must put in front of his or her own society what I call forgotten visions. Yeah. Vision or which is important now. To talk about Tima'ade is to talk about the vision of the past that's important for the present. Let me then conclude by saying this. think Somali peoples, wherever they are, live in what I call a fallen time. A fallen time. It's a biblical statement, a fallen time. A time of enormous antagonism, mutual antagonism. A time of enormous collective humiliation. And a time of enormous despair. So my suggestion, therefore, to scholarship into the 21st century, whether it is in the area of the environment or culture or in politics or in economics or other areas, is to always keep an eye on responding to the basis for and how to transcend mutual antagonism, collective humiliation, and despair. Therefore, a scholarship that has got its own integrity, it's not just advocacy, it has its own integrity, but at the same time, and disciplined. Adapti ay lahat scholarship ko ay nagjita, but at the same time, it is consequential. It has an impact on life, one way or another. Waxaan kusoo gabagabaynayaa waan heesayahay sanad waliba hoodiyo hawl iyo barwaaqaadiyo duuhaniidana waa laga helaayo hadda lagu xasuustaa kii loo hagaage noqoloo hawaliyahay noqoloo hawaliyahay noqoloo hawaliyahay nabadgelyo until next time.